everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to Heavy Metal Models. Back in the days when a 100-piece parts count was considered high-end, not a lot of collectors wondered what was going on under the skin of their die-cast cars. They knew the answer, and the answer was not a whole heck of a lot. These days, more and more manufacturers are getting into the high-detail, high-parts count part of the hobby, and that leaves a lot of collectors wondering just what's going on with those cars past their line of sight. Well, CMC has answered the question as to how they handle high detail by sending along a 1956 Maserati 300S rolling chassis. This is the same chassis that's under the body of their full-featured car that some collectors have on their shelves right now. And I have to tell you, it's one of the most remarkable things I've seen so far this year. Check it out. Anyone who's ever held a CMC model in their hand knows that the company has a penchant for extreme detail, and that the Chinese-German manufacturer of fine replicas delights in taking the detail deep into the unseen areas of their cars. Now all of that detail is available for display thanks to this 1956 300S rolling chassis, patterned after the mechanicals of a car like the ones driven by Carroll Shelby, Sterling Moss, and other famous drivers as the company climbed to a second place in the World Championship that year. That victory came after a lot of hard work, and I get the impression that this model of the Maserati came about in much the same way. CMC doesn't call out how many pieces went into this particular image, but given the complexity of the thing, it's a safe bet to imagine that the number tops out at close to 1,000. The wheels alone are likely to account for 100 bits of zinc, steel, and aluminum each, from the incredible etched knockoffs to the tiny adjusters on each individually threaded spoke. Each wheel is removable, and heaving any of these mini wonders reveals a beautifully cast zinc brake drum with crisp cooling fins and perfectly placed lightning holes. And here's a cool feature: those knockoffs are threaded differently on each side, just like the real cars. Of course, there's a note-for-note suspension at all four corners, and though it flexes, I didn't force the issue because I didn't want to roach the delicate frame. And what a frame it is! A wicked assemblage of die-cast metal and metallized plastic struts and cross members that triangulate and box their way in, around, and through the 300S's engine area, cockpit, and rear in a mind-numbing recreation of the racer's bones. The most entertaining pieces of this structure are the carefully placed outriggers. These thinner elements are soldered, riveted, and occasionally strapped together and do a great job of defining the Maserati shape, from the oval tubing at the very front to the soldered-on flat stock shapes that outline the hood, doors, and boot areas. Sans skin, the visual is one that's best taken in small bites. Up front, the radiator shroud has a coolant cap with a readable inscription. Farther back, the hoses leading to the car's 3-liter straight 6 all wear clamps, and they're all made from flexible stock. The engine they lead to is stunning, done in a series of metallized grays, silvers, and brass tones, and slammed with detail from top to bottom, starting with the acorn nuts on the twin cam covers, a set of loomed and groomed twin spark ignition leads, and 12 truly tiny spark plugs. On the induction side, 3 twin-throat Weber 45 DCOEs are piped, linked up, and fitted with steel intake trumpets. On the exhaust side, the 3-in-3 headers spider out above a pressed metal heat shield. Farther down, there's a fabric-covered oil pressure line. At the front of the block, twin magnetos hold court above a cross member that contains an amazing front end, complete to the copper brake lines and impeccably detailed backing plates at the wheels. Those wheels steer too, but I recommend lifting the car first so as not to stress the sweet little knuckles and joints that wind their way alongside the motor. Follow those bits rearward, and the model's dash is a well-ordered nest of pipes, cables, and wires run between the engine and driveline and the rear of the gauges. My favorite bit here is the bundle of wires running from behind the car's fuse block. On the public side of the dash, the gauges have been done in a correct blue with legible labels set under a clear-coated glass. Behind the steel-spoked wooden racing wheel, the cluster is detailed down to the start button and dash-mounted build tag, a remarkable inclusion that's almost readable. The leather-covered seats have pressed metal buckets that have been riveted to the chassis and set above a polished steel floor. The shifter is locked down, but the linkage is here, and so are the pedals set right where they belong. Everything is right where it belongs. It's a testament to this model's utter completeness that the rear section is as entertaining as the engine and cockpit. Beneath a leather-lashed spare, a full copy of the car's over-the-top spoked wheels, the Maserati's rearmost struts and tubes are a monkey jungle of angular elements that provide anchorage for the steel transverse leaf spring, a fully replicated suspension, and a remarkable stainless steel fuel tank and integral oil reservoir. There's also a lot of second-tier detailing, like the all-but-hidden cabled-in battery, and the riotous series of wires and pipes that cross through the area if you peer down into the cavities below the mounted wheel. Go below the car and it all becomes clear, from the bolted-in transaxle and completely realized the Dion rear to the tiny clamps on the rubber hoses and meticulously bent and installed copper brake and fuel lines. My favorites here are the steel-wrapped cables run to the transaxle and the tiny brass-toned unions and T's that join and terminate the copper lines everywhere. Look closer and there are tiny metal clamps holding them in place along the frame as they travel forward. They disappear under the riveted-on floorboard, but re-emerge at the front in a cluster that's been clamped to the backbone of the car with more steel and more gnat-sized rivets. If the rest of the model was intriguing, the area beneath its front end is astonishing. The dry sump under the straight six is bracketed by even more tubing, wearing more clamps and rubber hose sections. These are joined by an eye-popping group of castings that represent the Mazer's lower control arms, frame-mounted dampers, and the uplinks for the sway bar. Every flexible or rotating bit of the racer's geometry is here in scale, all put together with tiny screws, bolts, nuts, and rivets. CMC has made a reputation for creating beautiful model cars with well-crafted bodies and meticulous paint, but it's models like this one that show that their talent runs far more than skin deep. When I was a kid, I remember reading a book called The Great Cars, and it was a wonderful book written by a fellow named Ralph Stein. And in that book, he detailed a paragraph or two about a car called the Invicta. And one of the things that made the car so remarkable to him was the fact that somebody, every time they built an Invicta, was put in charge of laboriously carving out the Invicta name on a brace that held the dashboard in place. Now, this was a part that nobody, I repeat, nobody would ever see throughout the life of the car, until such time as the car was being torn down, rebuilt, or even scrapped. And it made him think about how deep the craftsmanship went when that car was put together. That's the same feeling I get when I see this incredible little chassis. To know that CMC makes their model cars to this level of detail, knowing full well that these cars will probably spend their entire lives on someone's shelves, never exposing that fine detail. Well, that says an awful lot about this maker. That means that they go the extra mile, that they go to bed at night knowing they've done this thing as fully and as completely as they can. These are remarkable model cars, and someday I hope that I get to sit down and really take one apart. And if I do, well, I'm going to show you all about it. Hey, if there's a car you want to see on Heavy Metal Models, let me know. Joe at HeavyMetalModels.com. Join us on our Facebook page, the Heavy Metal Models Facebook page, and of course, please subscribe to us right here on the YouTube channel so you can see these videos as they emerge and get a couple hours with them all to yourself. Thanks for being here. I truly appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.